So on Tuesday, because everything seems to be happening on a Tuesday, as I was playing Final Fantasy XIV and deforesting the entirety of my new island, Gearbox rolled up to Gamescom and officially announced the next installment in the Borderlands franchise. Now, because I cover Borderlands on the channel, I felt kind of obligated to talk about it. And this announcement, it acted as a sequel to what I would say is the best Borderlands game to ever be made. Yes, it is even better than 2. No, seriously, Tales from the Borderlands, the game in question, is what made me fall in love with the Borderlands universe. Because I had played 1 and 2, even the pre-sequel, and they were all great games in their own merit. But Tales had a certain magic about it. Magic that kept me interested in the franchise, and is basically the reason as to why I chose to start making videos about it. Now, Tales, it had a lot to prove since it was a serious departure from the other games, and that fact turned a lot of people off to it, but that game passed with flying colors. The stories were great, the universe was expanded upon, the characters, both old and new, were all so good and treated so well, and it was just perfect from beginning to end. For me, it was really the first time that I felt like as if I wanted more out of Borderlands than what Telltale had created. Sadly, Telltale, they went bankrupt, and Tales 2 sat out in a limbo for a very long time, despite it gaining a huge chunk of traction after its 5 episodes were released. But then, as if it was the gift from God, Gearbox picked it up, and they promised what I and many others wanted: more. And on Tuesday, we got more. Gearbox revealed the new Tales from the Borderlands, and it is, look, I don't know how to feel about it, to be quite honest with you. It is not at all what I expected it to be, because I and a lot of other people expected, probably justifiably so I would say, that the sequel to Tales from the Borderlands would pick up where the first game left off, with that cast of characters and those unfinished storylines. And I say that because while Tales is perfect, episode 5, its finale, left us with the biggest cliffhanger since the last big cliffhanger at the end of the pre-sequel. But instead of following through on what Telltale created, we were instead introduced to a new cast of characters and a new set of events that are going more in the direction of Borderlands 3 than Tales from the Borderlands. Now, just to clarify, there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. Forging ahead and creating new characters and stories is good. Every franchise needs to branch out and establish itself if it wants to succeed and be around for a long time. Borderlands especially, because 90% of it has taken place on one small planet, despite being called Borderlands, named after the fact that it takes place in the Borderlands section of the in-universe galaxy. But there's always a but. Branching out is cool, it's needed, it's alright, it's great, but what about the loose ends left in the wake of the previous entry? Obviously, as it stood back then, things were set up for this game, the new Tales from the Borderlands, to pick up immediately following episode 5 of the last game. So why are you changing course? Why go around and act as if nothing was left unsaid? Because really, looking at Tales 2 as it stands right now, I cannot help but be reminded of the debacle that occurred with Borderlands 3 and The Watcher. For those who don't know, Borderlands the pre-sequel, the prequel to Borderlands 2, making it, the pre-sequel, it set up a war at the very end of that game, a war that was warned about by a being known as The Watcher. Now, I won't rehash it all here because I've already done a video related to this. If you'd like to know more, you can go and watch that right here. But if you're a super Borderlands fan like I am, you know who the Watcher is, and you know what was expected in the next installment of Borderlands after the pre-sequel because you probably had those same expectations. You expected that the coming war would be the focus and that Borderlands 3 would be this climactic event that would see many of the characters from the past and present come together, team up, and oppose something. But then Borderlands 3 released and it flipped a complete U-turn and didn't touch the Watcher or the war or anything that had been built up in favor of doing the Calypso twins, who weren't and still are not the best characters to exist. Like literally one was knockoff Lady Aurelia mixed with Lilith, and the other was a rejected Devil May Cry character concept. Even worse, both tried to emulate Handsome Jack and it didn't work. Like at all. Rightfully so, people were mad. Expectations had been unreasonably subverted. But Gearbox did eventually confirm that the war we were promised was still coming and that Borderlands 3 was just made so they could expand the Borderlands out from Pandora, so the transition from, hanging around one planet to going to several different ones wasn't so jarring. It makes sense. I get it, didn't like the decision, but hey, the war is still happening, so there was at least that. But going back to Tales from the Borderlands, with all that in mind of what I just told you, characters that were present in Tales from the Borderlands were made relevant in Borderlands 3, but their stories in the last entry were not. This, and the cliffhanger ending of Episode 5, led to many people having the expectation that this game, the new Tales from the Borderlands, would continue where Tales 1 left off. But no, we are picking up with an entirely new cast of characters, again subverting expectations in a way that was not purposeful, but still really disingenuous. By all accounts, we are getting further and further away from one of the things we as fans were most interested in as we establish new stories over the discontinued. Now, does that mean that the end of Tales 1 won't be addressed in Tales 2? No, absolutely not. We know practically nothing about the new Tales from the Borderlands currently. It could very well subvert our expectations again and jump right into the stuff with Reese and Fiona and the others and clarify what exactly happened, just maybe through the lens of 3 new characters. But then again, I did some digging, and one of the producers for Tales 2 is on a record in saying that this new installment isn't a sequel to Tales 1, but it's its own thing. To quote directly, "This is not a sequel to Tales from the Borderlands. This is a brand new story with brand new characters and a new cast." So I mean, for whatever reason, it's almost like Gearbox refuses to address the things that we are all most interested in. But all in all, I'm really not sure how I feel about the new Tales from the Borderlands yet. Sure, I mean, it isn't a direct sequel to Tales 1, and that sucks, like really badly, but that doesn't mean it's cemented as bad already, or good for that matter. And I've watched the trailer a few times now, and there are some things that I would like to discuss in more detail because there are some pretty neat things, especially Tediore. But I am very busy on the IRL side of things currently, and being a one-man operation like I am, I simply do not have the time to make that type of video right now. So I shall save all of that stuff for another day, maybe when we get closer to October 21st, the month and day this game will be released. But I will say, as a plane flies overhead and probably gets picked up on my microphone, just like Tales 1, Tales 2 has a lot to prove, and I really, really hope, just like the first entry, it passes with flying colors. My name is Dave. Thank you for watching.